and thank you for joining the Time Is Always Now podcast. My name is Terence Young. I am your host for today, and this is a podcast dedicated to helping people get past their excuses, helping people move forward and not waiting on the right time, not waiting on the right circumstances for everything to be perfect before they're going to do it. This is a podcast that's about moving forward now and saying, you know what, in spite of those circumstances, I'm going to move forward anyway. And that's what it's all about. If you want to donate to the cause, remember you can always go to my website. It's terenceyoungnow.com. And I thank you in advance for allowing me and continuing to help me to spread these messages of hope, spread these messages of prosperity, these messages of peace and love throughout the world, and encouraging people and inspiring people to move forward now and make changes in their life for the better. That's what it's all about. So I'm super excited about this podcast today. Obviously, we have a lot of things going on in the United States and in our world right now with the coronavirus. So there's a couple of things that I want to go over and speak about. And I'd love to hear feedback from everyone out there. I've obviously talked to a lot of people about this already. I'm sure you have as well. Friends, family, everyone's talking about it and figuring out, what do we do? What is the proper path to take here going forward? What do we do for our families, and our jobs, with our loved ones, with our children? With all the different things that are going on, it's causing a lot of fear in the society, a lot of fear and anxiety in what we're supposed to do moving forward. I was just watching the news this morning, and they were talking about, I think in New York, where they're shutting down the school system or something like that, or attempting to. And I believe the mayor was talking about it. He was saying, well, if you shut down the school system, then the kids are home. And then because the kids are home, then you have the parents have to be home. And if the parents are home, well, then who's working in the hospital to service the people who are sick? Well, he makes a very valid point there. There's sides to both of it, where you can look at it and say, well, there's a reason to shut down the schools, but there's a reason maybe you shouldn't shut down the schools. But I wanted to focus on a couple of things today on what we can talk about, and specifically on how we move forward in here. Should we be cautious? And what's the difference between being cautious, using caution, and being in fear? Two totally different things. So when it comes to the coronavirus and what's going on, hey, it's serious. I mean, it's serious. When you see the amount of closures that they're doing, and here's the thing about it. When they're shutting down things like the NHL, the NBA, in any of these large gatherings where there is a lot of money involved, when you see that, because when there's money involved, people get things done. So if they're shutting these things down, that means we should definitely be taking it seriously. I mean, there's no way that the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, all of these major sporting events and other large events as well, concerts, things are being canceled. There's no way they would allow this to go on unless it was something to be seriously cautious about. And I think that's important to understand, because there's money involved. There's a lot of money involved. So I think we should be definitely cautious about it. I think we should look at what's happening in Italy right now and say, hey, we don't want to end up where they are now. Let's be cautious. Not in fear. Let's be cautious. I think it's important to understand that. There are things that we can do, right? There are things that we can do right now, and that we're already doing, right? Using social distancing, as they say. It's like a new word now, social distancing, right? And part of that is shutting down the large gatherings, the large concerts and sporting events and things like that, to stay away from people so we're not spreading the virus around as quickly. We're slowing that curve down. That's the most important thing. So those things are important. Again, being cautious, but not being in fear. Two totally different things. Of course, what everybody says, wash your hands, which we should be doing that all the time, right? Of course, wash your hands, use sanitizer. Anytime you touch a surface that's used all the time, clean it, sanitize it. Keep doing those types of things. Those things are important. If you can work from home, it's funny. I was a joke I was telling the other day. I said everything seems to be closing except my job, right? I think a lot of us feel that way, right? We're still getting up and going to work every day, but our economy has to move forward. So yes, we do have to go to work, right? Some people, and I feel for some people, the people whose income is derived from these large events, such as I was watching the Dallas Mavericks owner, Mark Cuban. He was talking about it, and I applaud him for it. He said right away, we need to find a way to take care of the people whose income is derived from these games. They work at the stadium. That's it. That's huge. And I applaud him for taking care of him. But all types of artists and entertainers, they could be losing business because of this, right? Because they depend on those shows. You know, the people who set up, the people who serve the food, the people who work in all of that, cleaning up, all of that for these large venues and things and shows. Well, they're losing business, right? I'm a speaker, and I had an event to speak at today, and we decided to reschedule it for another time because of everything that's going on. So it's affecting us in many different ways, and it affects everybody, right? Not just because you might be sick. That's not it. It could affect you in all kind of other ways. Our economics are being affected by this. So again, we want to be cautious. We see what's going on around the world, and we know it's here. We know it's spreading. So we want to be cautious, but we don't want to be in fear. One of the important things I'll share with you, and I'm not saying that I agree or disagree with everything we're doing right now. I'll say this though. This is the funny thing about it. If you can derive something funny about what we're going on right now, is if nothing happens, and what I mean by that is we don't have a large outbreak of people getting sick and then the hospital beds getting filled. If that were to happen, then we did the right thing. Isn't that funny? If nothing happens and we don't get a lot of people sick and we don't overrun our hospital capacity and all of that, then we did the right thing. And I think a lot of people are going to have trouble with that. I think if they don't see a ton of people get sick, they're going to get upset, which is almost like backwards thinking, right? But that means we've done the right thing. That means the social distancing worked, closing down these large events, that worked. Because we didn't overrun our hospital system. We didn't have tons and millions of people sick. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. So we want to operate in caution, but not in fear. So important. Operate in caution, but not in fear. So the key to my podcast today is this. We want to look at that concept of being cautious versus being fearful. You know, there's a couple of different ways we can look at it. When you're cautious, well, you're looking at a situation, right? You're looking at a situation, you're saying, okay, here are the things that could happen. It could go this way, it could go that way, it could be detrimental to my health, it could be great for me, I could be successful in doing it. So I'm being cautious, but I'm still moving forward. I'm being cautious, but I'm still moving forward. That's the most important thing. Now, being fearful is a different thing. It's a different animal altogether. Being fearful will cause you to be, first of all, paralyzed, where you will not move forward at all. That's one thing. That's not good. But also being fearful will cause you to act irrationally towards a situation. And what I mean by irrational is you'll start doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And then that way, then your actions affect everyone else's actions. We've seen that happen in our country, right? I mean, everyone knows by now. When you go to the grocery store and there's no toilet paper, there's no paper towels. It's weird. I did it myself. I went there on Friday, and there was no toilet paper in Walmart. Weirdest thing. I was able to find some somewhere else, but the good thing is, the weird thing is, people are acting irrationally about the situation, and the reason they are is because of fear. You know, and I get the fear. I guess, you guys tell me, I guess they're thinking they're going to be in their houses for months at a time, because of this. That's the fear. I'm going to be in my house for the next 3 months, so I got to grab all the food and all the toilet paper and paper towels I can have. Maybe that's what's happening. But that's acting in fear. And then that fear, that spreads, that irrationality spreads and it affects everyone else as well. And we don't want to act in that. We don't want. Let me give you an example. It was just for my daughter. We were driving, and she was in her own car. I never rode with her in her own car before. She's driven before. She's 21 now, and in other people's car, and in my car. But this time, she got her own car, and so we were driving. So I was talking to her about being cautious, joking around with her about 10 and 2, where you put your hands at, and that's, just we're having a good time. So as a new driver, she's being cautious. She's being cautious. She said when she was driving over to see us, she didn't take the interstate. And I was like, okay, you're not comfortable with it yet, not getting on and off the interstate with the speed. You're being cautious. Great. Now, what would be the opposite of that? Being fearful. Being fearful where she doesn't get in the car at all. Like she has her own car, but she's so afraid to drive, so fearful to drive that she doesn't drive the car at all. That's being in fear. That's the difference between being cautious and being in fear. Now, how do you take that to the step of being of overreacting, right? Of overreacting to it. Well, let's say she gets in the car, and then she goes to get on the interstate, but she says, I'm going to drive 2 miles an hour. Well, no, see that you can't do that, or 10 miles an hour. Let's say you can't drive 2 miles an hour. I'm going to drive 10 miles an hour on the interstate to be safe. Now that's overreacting to driving. See, if you're going to get on the interstate, you've got to drive, right? But if you do it 10 miles an hour, you're going to now affect other people on the interstate. Now you're causing a situation because you're on there. You see what I'm saying? You're causing a situation to be worse than what it is because you're overreacting to driving on the interstate. So you have to act in caution. I applauded her for being cautious and saying she's not going to get on the interstate yet, but also not being in total fear and not driving it all together, or overreacting and getting on the interstate and being almost causing an accident for doing something like that. We have to be cautious, and I think it warrants to be cautious looking at the situation, looking at what it's done throughout the world so far, and as it continues to spread through the United States. It's going to spread. We already know that. Just what's going to happen. What's going to happen. How we're going to deal with it. I think I talked about that in a previous podcast. Right? It's not what happens. It's how we react to what happens. That's a lifelong lesson right there. So true. I think one of the things that we should remember is this. Everyone has an agenda. So be very careful when you hear an expert, because there's so many of them out there, say, well, this is what we should do. Because you know what happens. That's one of the experts. But another expert could be saying something totally opposite to that, right? I mean, so we got to be careful about hearing an expert say this is what we should do. Well, you have to listen and then decide on your own, well, what's the best route for us to take? Because remember, even experts could have an agenda. Even the media could have an agenda of what they want us to perceive, what they want to move forward, what they want to happen. And they can push that agenda on us and lead us into a consciousness of fear. And I believe that's what's happening right now. The media is pushing us towards an agenda of fear, when what we could do is be leaning in to the God that lives within us, leading into the peace that resides within us, leading into the calmness that resides within us, leading into the wholeness and the health that resides within us. And then we can utilize that understanding, utilize that truth, utilize that knowing, and send it back out to the world. That's the dichotomy that we're dealing with right now. If we decide collectively in our consciousness that we are not going to allow the fear to set in, then we can have that ripple effect on the rest of our world, that ripple effect on our neighbors and our friends and everyone in this country and everyone in the world. So what's happening is the opposite. We're having the ripple effect of fear. One person goes and buys all the toilet paper, then everybody else goes and buys all the toilet paper, and then you show up at Walmart or wherever and there's no toilet paper. That's the ripple effect. But we can reverse that. by going inside, going into that I am inside of each and every one of us, that Christ that lives within us, and saying, you know what? I am going to breathe out peace. I'm going to breathe out calmness. I'm going to breathe out love, and I'm going to send that out into the world. And if we do that, we can change the collective consciousness of our world. And yes, is the virus still going to spread? Of course it is. That's inevitable. But how we deal with it, how we move forward is so, so important. We want to be cautious. We want to respect the fact that it's out there and it's happening, but we don't want to be in fear. There's a difference. There's a difference. Here's the most important thing. If you truly believe that God's in every situation, which I believe that. I was having a conversation with my mom the other day when we were talking about it. If you truly believe that God is omnipresence, meaning in all places, all things at all times, well, God is within this. God is within you. God is within this situation. So if you believe that, then you know that, well, ultimately it's working for our unfolding good. It's working for our unfolding good. How are we going to look at it? If you believe that God's in everything, then what is there to fear? Nothing. Nothing. There's nothing to fear if you believe that God is in everything. Right? God is omnipresent in all things, all places, all times. So God's in the doctors, God's within this situation, God's within the virus, in the hospitals, in everyone else's collective consciousness dealing with it. God's in it all. So what is there to fear? We want to be cautious. We want to do the right things. We want to practice the social distancing. We want to wash our hands and sanitize and all those things. But we don't want to be in fear. Because there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear when you understand the truth that God is in every single situation in our lives. It all comes down to this. What's your faith? What's your faith? Do you have the faith, even the size of a mustard seed? Right? Just that little bit of faith. Saying, you know what, God, I know you're in this. I know it may not look good right now, but I know you're in it. I know it may be troubling right now, but I know you're in it. I know that I may be concerned right now, but I know you're in it. I know you're in it. I know I'm not going to worry because I know God's in control. I know you're in control, God. So I'm not going to worry. I'm going to be cautious. I'm going to do the things that I need to do. I'm going to take care of my fellow man. But I'm not going to be fearful. I'm not going to walk in fear. Right? That's what it's about. That's what it's about. Where is your faith? If you have a faith that's strong, if you have a faith that's powerful, if you have a faith that you believe in, whether you call it God or Krishna or Allah or Buddha or whatever you want to call it, the universe, the Christ within, the I am, I don't care what you call it. If you have a faith, and you believe in that, hold strong to that. Hold strong to that. Trust in that. Trust in that. If you do that, then that will absolutely change your life. If you do that and breathe in that understanding, that love, that calmness, that peace, that wholeness that you are. So you don't have to inhibit this dis-ease, and you can breathe it back out and help other people recover, help our consciousness recover, help our friends, our neighbors, the entire world recover from what is going on right now. We can breathe that out into the universe and change the trajectory of what's going on. That's what we want to do. Where's your faith? Be cautious, but there is no need to be in fear. None whatsoever. If we do that, it will change all of our lives. And then we can unequivocally say, I own the now, and I have won. This is TY. I am signing off for the day. I wish you wholeness. I wish you health, love, good favor. Remember that the time is always now.